Ignacio, welcome to the Voice of EB5. We're a pleasure to have you on the live podcast today.
Thank you, Ali. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I hope that we can have a great session that helps explain people some of the wonderful benefits of the new program.
Okay, great. So a little bit of a background, Ignacio, I was going to give the public here. You've been kind of in the immigration space for quite some time. We've known each other for a while now. Before you, I know you worked at Foster Kwan before, one of the top immigration lawyers in our magazine, actually. So over the last 18 years, you've been practicing law, and Ignacio has advised a lot of companies. And since 2003, you've represented a lot of employees, skilled workers, professors, researchers, professionals, and you helped them out with their immigration planning to the U.S. So I know you're more diverse than just CB5. Ignacio was also selected to serve many of the AILA committees, and you've worked as a liaison in a few other organizations across the U.S. You're currently specializing in EB5 because I see you a lot. I'm guessing that's what you do a lot. And I kind of wanted to hear more about your practice. But Ignacio is one of our well-educated attorneys that has been in our top 25, and I welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introductions.
Absolutely. So Ignacio, give me a background of like where your specialty lies. I know a lot of people ask, there's a lot of attorneys in the space, and, where does your specialty lie in the space of EB5?
In relation to EB5 in particular, I've represented both regional centers and investors, and really the strength in my practice is how deep it is, how robust it is, because I've seen so many facets of what the immigration service can do with an EB5 case. And so we have the ability to compare projects on an ongoing basis, both at the I-526 and the I-829 stage, which we then, feed into our preparation of new cases. Whenever we see a trend emerging, we take that into account. It also means that we have the ability to comment to our clients how things are evolving and where are the inflection points that they can anticipate in their visa journey.
So are most of your clients the actual investors, or is it the developers?
Most of my clients are the actual investors, yes.
Okay, so you're in the business of a lot of 526 work, correct?
526s, 829s, that's right.
Do you also follow lawsuits as well, the mandamus?
Well, mandamus is different. We do have a fair number of mandamus cases. We don't do some of the federal court litigation that's been going on. It's not something that we pursue. We typically refer that out to the firms that are really stronger in that field.
So most of your work is helping with a lot of the investors file their forms and get the rights applications in with the...
Yes. I mean, for us, really it's the relationship, because these things take forever, right? This is not a short process. In the best of circumstances, even with the new program running as best as it can, this is a 5-year cycle. So, we basically build the relationship with the client from the moment they tell us that they want to pursue this, and we analyze it from the client's perspective. What's best for you? What's best for your family? What's best for your children? If this is the right solution at this time, who are the target people in your family that are going to lead the way? What's the sequencing of the visas for the whole family? Source of funds is a major part of that initial conversation.
It's been 10 years since you've owned your firm. So are you practicing mostly EB5, or is it like half of the practice EB5?
It's really mostly EB5, but everything else under the sun for me means, investor immigration. What I've focused in from most of my career as an immigration lawyer is investor immigration. So startups,
E2s,
Ls, EB1Cs, EB1 extraordinary ability, visas for entrepreneurs. Certainly we've done, visas for athletes, artists, people in the media, journalists, researchers, you name it. But we tend to have a a very strong clientele among entrepreneurial families.
Where is the office located, and who's a part of your team?
So head offices are in Washington, D.C., and we have approximately 14 staff members in Washington. And we have satellite offices in Toronto for our Canadian visa work. And we also have a satellite office in Delhi for both EB5, L visas, EB1Cs, EB1As for Indian-born
What
born
does that
professionals.
satellite office in India do? How does that work? Is it like
Well,
for
you probably know that in India,
force
as foreign lawyer, you cannot practice law, right?
right?
You have to hire a local lawyer, and we've had the good fortune of working with two wonderful lawyers for many years now that have been part of our
Yeah.
team, and in India, in Delhi. As part of our team, we rely on them for giving us 24/7 services. So, it's the handshake between India time and Eastern time or North America time. So it not only in terms of technical skills and client relations, client liaison, but just in general in supporting the team.
So your Indian lawyers are working with source of funds and
Yes,
other. And so, are you aware that the tax to pull money out or the fee to pull money out is increasing, right?
yes.
It's 5% till the end of this month, is it?
I don't write the rules. I just warn people about them. So we had an article up, several weeks ago about this issue, and we're telling all of our clients, our prospective clients, please take this into account. This could impact your pocketbook, right? This is really where it hurts.
It's
Sorry,
five
go ahead.
percent right now, but what is it going up to? I
It's going up to, I believe, 20%.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
that's insane.
yeah. No, this is serious. This is just, you can get it back in principle. You can get it back, but up front, you have to disperse this money out of your own pocket.
How do you kind of go about creating ways to lower that number? Is there maybe a swap or something available? Is there any other way to do it, or do you have to
You
pay that?
know, I think for the time being, the best approach is to understand that if you take steps before the new tax takes effect, then you don't have to worry about swaps or novel investment products. At the end of the day, the core rule could be interpreted more broadly. We don't know yet, but for the time being, it's crystal clear that if an investor moves money before the new tax enters into effect, then it's 5% instead of 20%.
Got it.
Right.
Now, what other countries do you focus on besides India? You say you do the Canada program. Is
We
that
do,
the
yeah, but that's a completely
real?
different conversation. But we do
Yeah, I
do.
know it is, but I'm just curious where kind of the Donoso firm lies. You got two in India, you got some Canadian immigration, right?
You
So you
see,
got
Canada has had a prominent relation with India and China as a destination for immigrants for many, many years.
so you got staff in Canada for the Canadian program, right? Kind of big
Yes,
picture. And
that's
then
right.
what the rest of the folks are in DC, and what do they work on a certain country or a certain language?
Right. We've always had a strong bench or a deep bench of lawyers and paralegals that speak they're native Mandarin speakers, because many, many of our clients are from China. And we've
Oh wow.
helped, we've built relationships with agents in China who are still operating under the new program. And that's important to be able to manage those clients, those relationships. So we've always had a lot of strength in our team for Chinese speakers.
Not to be confused with Spanish, I think your first and last name is Spanish, correct?
It is, yeah. That's right.
So
So
you're
I'm an
not
immigrant to the United States.
from
I
where?
was born in Chile. I have roots in Canada, and so there's a Canadian law angle for you. I'm an immigrant. I speak native Spanish along with French, although there's not that many people who want to hear me speak French. But
Right.
because of that, I've always had a wonderful practice with Latin America, particularly Mexico.
You do Latin America as well,
Yes, yes. And
but you're
I don't want to
China's.
get ahead of myself, but we're looking at opening a satellite office in Mexico City. That's going to be by the end of 2023, we should have one, but that's still in the works. Not
Okay.
formalized yet.
Why Mexico City? Why not
Well,
Cartagena,
you know,
Bogota, Buenos Aires?
I think the volume of potential clients across the investor immigration space from Mexico has always been consistent. It goes a little bit up and down, but it is quite consistent. I've always had a helpful practice. They're wonderful clients. And we've been talking to a wonderful, reputable law firm in Mexico City about social ties. So this is just the fruit of what's been going on for the last 12 months.
So can I say your specialty is India, China, and Mexico?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say no.
Am I missing any other countries that you guys service?
Well, we're always looking to expand. You know, we've had wonderful clients from Canada. We've had European clients from United Kingdom. I mean, I could go on and on. And like many firms that work in the EB5 space, their client roster is really extraordinarily international.
Who sends you the clients generally? Do they call you directly or do you work with the agent network?
We during let's say the initial part of the EB5 program until the lapse in 2021, we had a very strong set of relationships with foreign agents. So many of those agents under the new legislation have asked us how to comply with the registration requirements under Form 956K as in kilo. So those relationships continue. It's just that the market is always changing, and you know, from our perspective, if you take care of clients, keep at it, and just make sure that people do the best they can under the circumstances. You know, it just builds that long, broad network that you want.
So for someone who's kind of new and listening to this, for new developers listening in on the podcast, how is the relationship between you and the investor as compared to you and the developer? Do they just say, "Hey, Ignacio, here's a deal we want to do. Can you do the paperwork?" Do you typically know the projects? Are you pretty far from the actual EB5 projects? Are you more just kind of helping the investor pick whatever they want to pick?
Sometimes investors come in bundles, and you know, this is very typical of all immigrants, that they group together to pool their minds, pool their goals, and sometimes that means that a group of individual investors will come to my firm and say, "Well, we found this project, and we want to move forward as fast as possible."
Yeah.
Frequently, part of the conversation is moving forward as fast as possible. And so in that situation, we don't do a project analysis unless it's called for. You know, we will do a you know, threshold level analysis. Other times the client says, I need to get your company to analyze several projects and talk to me about whether you think this is the right approach. And by the way, here's my resume and my wife's resume. And I'd like you to also look at other visa options in addition to EB5. So it's a kind of like a 360-degree whole family approach. And you know, that's par for the course for our firm. Other times we have agent relationships or regional center relationships. Well, they will say, Ignacio, we will send you cases because they trust the credibility, accuracy of the analysis, and efficiency of the firm,
I
right?
see. So it kind of comes from every different place.
Yeah, I mean, from an agent's perspective, the key is quality and speed. From a regional center's perspective, the key is quality, speed, and transparency. I should say the agent also wants transparency. They don't want the law firm that's handling an important client's case, and every client is an important client, to disappear, to not do things expeditiously, or to give the client shallow advice, mistaken advice. This is a challenging field. If it was a cakewalk, I would be having a different conversation with my clients. But it's challenging. Technically, it's challenging in terms of all the moving parts. It has such a strong component of corporate work, corporate documents, and banking documents, contracts, not typical of other immigration fields. So because of the additional moving parts like that, people want pretty robust analysis of something that they're
Broad
doing.
services too, very broad. Anywhere from looking at a project to, I'm sure, wiring money from another country. It's very broad stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to look like in the next, call it 24 months with EB5, next 36 months? What do you think it's going to
It's
look
going
like?
to be a mad dash. It's going to be the cannonball run. How fast can we get across the country? I don't know. Cannonball Run is a movie from the 1970s. I think it still continues today. But the original Cannonball Run was basically a bunch of 1970s movie stars were all like household names, getting
Right.
in cars and rushing across the country who could get there first. And the reason I mention that is because we're all waiting for that first visa approval under the new program. And once that happens, it's going to be a mad dash, because there's an unusual and unhelpful level of uncertainty today, entirely self-inflicted by our dear friends at the Immigration Service, who've, been circling the wagons, talking to themselves, not analyzing cases, not issuing decisions to the public for the last 12 months. And the public is getting exasperated, and the program looks like it's, basically either grinding to a halt. Perhaps you can call it a black box. Perhaps you can call it, a waste of time. Whatever the case is, it's an issue for investors, and investors want certainty. They deserve it at the investment thresholds that they're paying, at the visa fees that they're paying, at the filing fees that they're paying. Yes, they deserve certainty. Not a guaranteed result, but certainly a reasonable expectation of delivery of a decision.
How much is that filing fee now?
In round numbers, you're looking at $3,500 for the 526 and just under $4,000 for the 829. And in round numbers, that's going to bump up to $20,000 between the 526 and the 829 in the future.
Oh, really?
That's one case from one family. Regional center fees are going through the roof, with new amendments costing, in round numbers, $47,000. And then there's the annual regional center fees, which are kicking in, I believe, April 1, if I'm not mistaken. There's a whole bunch of fees that are being added.
April 1? Is that when they're supposed to kick in?
Yeah, I think so.
That's an important date. Yes,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So the fees are increasing to what on April 1?
Let me go through. There is an annual regional center fee under the Reform and Integrity Act. Okay. And that regional center fee is $20,000 for regional centers with more than 20 investors, $10,000 for regional centers with 20 or fewer investors. And that fee is now due April 1. So we are just a couple of days away from regional centers having to kick in some money to the kitty so the Immigration Service can
That's
run
not fun.
fraud detection, national security background checks on them.
That's not fun.
No, it's
They're
root
not going to
canal,
be happy.
but with more zeros.
Oh no, it's not going to be happy.
Yeah.
Happy day.
Well, that's
So
on the regional centers, so that's a different animal. But the one that bothers the general public are the fees for inaction.
So what's going to be the you think the biggest issue in the next like 2 or 3 years? Is it going to be the fact that the dollar has gone up and other currencies have gone down? Do you feel like that's a major issue?
It's so hard. I mean, dealing with the dollar is a big challenge. For example, Mexico's exchange rate with the dollar has improved significantly in the last 12 months.
Depends on the country,
Very
right? So
much
because I know some countries, the dollar has gotten stronger, and that
and then
makes it
that
like
has
a
a double
tougher
effect,
investment.
right? Because for people, let's take the example of Mexico. For people from Mexico who want to pursue an EB5 investment or any investment in the United States, this is wonderful, right? They've just saved themselves 10% or even more in comparison to the situation 12 months ago. But at the same time, there are other people in Mexico who will say, well, things are okay here. Perhaps we don't need to rush and move to the United States. So everything cuts both ways depending on the family. Macro level issues, I think the war in Ukraine is a huge issue. It's just normal human reaction to hedge your bets. And I think that's the dominant trend when you see a war, raging somewhat unpredictably in Central Europe. Of course, there are people who are going to look at exactly that situation and say, this means that we need to take action. And there are others that will say, and I think the dominant trend is to say, we need to slow down and see what happens. That is kind of a break on not just the EB5 program, it's everything across the economy, whether it's international travel or investment of any kind. So that once that's settled, and God willing, it will be settled, and there will be peace again in Europe, then I think the world economy will react positively to that.
That's good. Yeah, because the money down like your neighbor Buenos Aires and Argentina, that money has been devaluing quite a bit. A lot of countries, they've had some crazy currency devaluation,
Yeah, it is a very good point. I
800
think
grand they like 1.5 million, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, very good point. I think another, let's say, more domestic level issue is the pervasiveness of visa waiting lists. They are driving people into the EB5 program who are people that were really dedicated to the EB2, EB3 program, or now even the EB1 program, whether it's EB1A, extraordinary ability, or EB1C, multinational managers. The folks that were well on track in these established permanent residency programs through employment are taking a serious look at the EB5 program to determine whether it's an alternative that they want to pursue, partly because they've been able to make enough money either abroad or in the United States. God bless them for that. This is good for the world, right? Seeing people accumulate capital of this type is fantastic. It means that economies throughout the world are getting economic growth.
Does that mean when you say concurrent filing too, and I hear that, what does that mean when they talk about that as immigration?
I don't use concurrent filing. I use simultaneous. That's the normal way of talking, right? Concurrent is immigration lawyer jargon. It's a really simple idea. Every green card program in the United States has two key moments. One is the request for the green card, and the other is the delivery of the green card. There are two moments, two different applications, right? In the family system, it's Form I-130, immigrant petition for alien relative. In the EB5 system, under a regional center investment, it's Form I-526E, petition for a regional center investor, okay? That is a request to the U.S. Immigration Service to grant permanent residency through investment to a group of people, one person and their dependents, right? If that application or petition, as it's called, is approved, the next question is, where are you eligible to receive delivery of that permanent residency card? And adjustment of status form I-485 is one option available to people who are lawfully in the United States, right, and who don't have certain immigration violations. So you have to be, number one, in the United States at the time. Number two, you have to be
Is
eligible.
the 485 exclusive to EB5, or is it for any?
No, it's not. You're right. It's completely generic to all immigrant visas or permanent residency visas.
Can you apply for like an EB1 and an EB5 at the same time?
Yes.
So can you file for a L1 and that's a non-immigrant visa, right? The L1?
Correct. Temporary.
Temporary. So you file for a temporary and a permanent at the same time?
Yes, you can.
Is that what simultaneous means, when you can apply for everything at the same time?
Well, there's different levels of simultaneity. Like, you can file a temporary work visa to the United States and request permanent residency to the United States at the same time.
Okay.
Now, the actual timing of entries and exits may be impacted by the fact that you're applying for, let's say, one type of visa, one temporary visa in comparison to another visa. Let's give a really dramatic example. You apply for a visitor visa, a B visitor visa or tourist visa, at the US consulate in your home country, and you simultaneously file a marriage-based permanent residency petition because you married an American citizen, right? And that particular example, it has a problem attached to it, which is called the immigrant intent rule. You cannot have intention to come and live in the United States if you're requesting a visitor visa. Completely different situation is if you're requesting an L visa. It's a dual intent visa. It just doesn't matter what your intention is. So you can request permanent residency, any permanent residency, through the employment or family-based system if you're requesting an L visa, because it's a dual intent visa. The visa is indifferent to whether you want to live in the United States for a few years or for the rest of your life. So this is some of the planning and scheduling that we do with our clients, right?
So the simultaneous, I want to understand that, the concurrent or simultaneous, does that involve, when the people say that, do they talk about that being for immigrant, for the visa, permanent visas, or do they talk about that being for anything?
Yes, it's a good question. So usually when we talk about concurrent filing or simultaneous filing, we're talking about filing one permanent residency petition with a request for adjustment of status. And those are typically used as concurrent or simultaneous filing.
So that's EB5, and then what's adjustment of status?
Adjustment of status is the request by a person who's physically present lawfully in the United States to have their green card delivered in the United States without having to go home to their local US consulate in their home country.
So that's a concurrent.
That's what usually, when somebody talks about concurrent filing, that's what they're talking about, or simultaneous.
So it means I'm currently in the United States with an H1B,
for example,
and I file my AB5.
Yes. So one of the things about concurrent filing is that you have to be lawfully in the United States.
My question to you is, H1B is only X number of years. What if that ends and I have to go back?
It could happen.
So the concurrent really doesn't make a difference. The concurrent only makes a difference towards the end of my EB5, about to get my 829, and I'm in H1B.
You know, the thing about concurrent filing, and you make a really good point. When does it really change people's lives? And I would argue it's actually right now is when it's most interesting for somebody. Let's give the example of somebody who is now on H status. And just to make it interesting, let's assume that this person was born in India and has an EB2 and an EB3 employment-based permanent residency petition approved. So they're working lawfully in the United States, 2 options at getting permanent residency. Both of them, however, are subject to really long waiting lists.
Okay.
So this particular candidate or potential investor is looking at EB5, determine whether quantitatively and qualitatively it's going to be an improvement over the current situation, because they already have 2 permanent residency options and a very helpful work visa,
But a long line.
So we look at concurrent filing and we say 2 things. Number 1, are they lawfully? Yes, they're lawfully in the United States. Number 2, is there a visa waiting list for an EB5 visa for this particular person? And the answer is no, there's not. So that person is eligible to file not only the I-526E immigrant application through a regional center investment, they're eligible to file concurrently or simultaneously Form I-45 adjustment of status, which does 3 really important things. Once you file it, that person can remain in the United States regardless of their temporary visa status, regardless of their H status. So suddenly they are free from the H system. I'm not saying the H system is a bad system. I'm just saying that perhaps their life goals and their career goals involve starting your own business or working for many companies as a consultant. Whatever the case is, you are now eligible to remove yourself from the H system if that's what you want. You don't have to be tied to an H to remain in the United States. Number 2, you have access to a temporary work permit under the adjustment of status. And that temporary work permit is really interesting because I call it an open work permit. You can work as an employee, part-time or full-time. You can work as a consultant, part-time or full-time, or you can own your own business. Now, you cannot do that with an H. You're going to have a series of hoops, many hurdles to be able to pull that off with an H visa. But with an open work permit or I-765 EAD employment authorization document under adjustment of status, suddenly all those doors are open.
At this point, I'd like to say, come see Ignacio for help because I'm lost right now.
It's too much.
You said EB2. You said someone is under EB2 or EB3, and then they wanted to get in front of the line, so they also file the EB5. That's what we were talking about in the first fact pattern. So why are you bringing in H and all this other stuff? So our example was EB2 and EB3, and you can currently file an EB5. Does that mean that I get my does the EB5 process faster in that case if my EB2 and EB3 were ready to go and I was just waiting in line? Does that mean I get a faster EB5?
Yes, it's a massive boost.
So what does that mean? Does that mean automatically as soon as I put my investment in, I got it? If I've been in the EB2 and EB3 line for 6 years.
So let's take a typical example of somebody on EB2 or EB3.
Okay.
They are working in the United States on H status. So that's where the H came into the picture.
Oh, okay. So they need an H to work. EB2 and EB3 need an H to work.
You don't need it, but for practical purposes, companies that hire you on H status.
I got it. I got you.
They're going to sponsor you EB2, EB3 green card.
Okay, so you lose the H status. So how quickly can I get? Let's just say, put a real example. I'm on my EB2. It's year 7, or EB3. It's year 7, and I just filed my EB5 this year. What does that mean?
So you're already past your 6 years of initial H status, and you are getting the benefit through I-45 concurrent filing with I-526E EB5 petition of basically spinning away from that relationship you have with your employer. Maybe it was a good relationship, but you're growing, right? As a professional, you want to do something else on your career. As I mentioned, it allows self-employment.
But I mean, can I get my green card faster by filing the EB5 if I'm on the EB2 track?
Well, this goes back to what I said earlier. Remember when I said Cannonball Valley?
I sound like an investor now. Can I get my green card faster?
The answer is a cautious yes. So remember when I mentioned the cannonball run or cannonball rally? I
Right.
said, the reason I said that when we start getting approvals, people will react. And right now, if somebody says, Mr. Donoso, you've been at this for many years now, and you have a wealth of knowledge, when do you think, if I file my visa petition today in the EB-5 program, will I get a decision? And I'm like, my friend, the Immigration Service is an unpredictable regulatory agency. The best guess that I can give you, given my wealth of experience, is 2 years. One of them was guess.
Yes.
Look, my friend, I cannot tell you something I don't know. I have no data point, no experience with the new system that would give me an answer, that answer you in concrete terms. And our dear friends at the Immigration Service, the regulatory agency, have steadfastly refused to either tell us what, for example, priority processing for rural petitions means, or give us an example of how long it'll take. So I believe today there was a news item promoted by a regional center saying that either they or somebody that they were aware of received project approval for a rural project in approximately 9 months.
That might be just a rumor. We don't know, right?
So I have no idea whether it's true or not. But this is how rumors get started.
Right. Well, I think I understand now. So basically, I become closer to the front of the line if I file an EB-5 while I'm here on an EB-2, EB-3 with a name.
That's it. So the EB-2, EB-3 waiting list for India is really quite something. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It is hovering in the decades. I mean, on paper, it's a 10-year waiting list.
So now I see the value. We're able to file EB-5 to boost our EB-2 and EB-3s.
Yeah.
So
anybody who is on an EB-2, EB-3 has had it up to here with the idea of an endless temporary skilled worker visa and the promise of a permanent residency that never arrives, says, okay, I have the wherewithal to make this investment.
How much can they renew their H's? Can they renew their H's over and over and over again, or no?
Yes, they can. It's the ability to get on with your life. That's it. You're looking at a family that, number one, they're skilled. These are all skilled workers, right? So they're highly educated, ambitious people, have been able to make it with whatever employer is sponsoring them in the United States, which means that they've proven themselves apt, or it's a good fit with the US labor market, right? Yet they're not getting a break. They're told, okay, you applied in 2016, the waiting list is 10 years. And I'm undercounting the waiting list by several decades, depending on who you ask.
I think I need session part 2 of Ignacio Donoso's immigration. If I start getting this deep, I'm going to start learning a lot.
This is good stuff. But this is the decision making that people go through. And God bless them, they are so informed.
It's good because I never knew what concurrent filing actually was. I hear it all the time. I'm like, what does that mean? So I'm glad we've had this talk. I think I'll bring up another hot buzz term for you next time on the podcast. This is enough information for my brain today.
Well,
I appreciate being on the podcast, though, and
hopefully we'll have actual concrete results. We're going to have a stakeholder call in April from the U.S. Immigration Service, so we're going to get news from the Oracle.
Yeah, to be continued. Donoso Part 2.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything.
Bye-bye.